Hello. I'm very thankful to be here for the Rails Foundation to trust me again. For the ones that came willingly, thank you for being here. For the ones that came unwillingly, are forced, kind of. Also, thank you. I see you everywhere. So I'm going to be talking about testing integrations, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I chose the name before having any content ready because it kind of rolls in the tongue. People know the movie. I have not watched it. So I made sense after the fact, so I hope everything fits together. And if you saw my last year's Rails Wall talk and enjoyed the animations, I hope this one does not disappoint. Okay. Does this work? Yes. So my name is Julia López. I'm from Barcelona. I've been doing Rails since 2011. I love refactoring, upgrades, everything that Robbie said before. I love doing all that. You know, I'm always like pushing for that to happen. And I added a new thing here. It's called billing, because the last 3 years I've been like leading the implementation of a new billing system at Harvest, which is an integration, specifically with Stripe. Just heads up, because like most of the examples here are going to be about that, because I didn't want to go back in the past. I work at Harvest, the time tracking tool. It's been built in Rails since 2006. We are a small engineering team, so I got the chance to work in many parts of the code. It's a monolith. We own everything. It's all my baby. Everybody's baby, but my baby too. And even if it's like a 17, 18-year-old app, you have to take that in mind when I go through the examples and everything. And I want to thank the people that before me set up everything that I'm going to show today. I've been just using it, extending it, but it was not my idea. I didn't know about those before. So, okay, Harvest connects to multiple tools. Some of those tools are like for extending the features that we are offering, like QuickBooks, Xero, Stripe, Deal, Microsoft, Google APIs, PayPal, Slack. Other tools like we use internally, Stripe, Braintree, Zendesk, CustomerIO, whatever. You see, I wanted to have this dramatic slide. It's not advertisement. I don't want to throw shade about any of those APIs, but I wanted you to relate that working with APIs, it's not joyful sometimes, and we've seen it all, here, and there are more. I cannot find all the logos. So what can you expect from my talk? This is not a talk about why testing is important, which it is, as Robbie said. It is not about TDD. I mean, you do you. Test coverage or RSpec versus test unit or mini-test, because there's only one right answer. We'll go over popular Ruby gems used for testing. It's opinionated, because we are opinionated. It comes with specific recommendations, but it's going to show you all the pros and cons. And it's full of real-life examples, which are my favorite talks. And I hope you leave here maybe knowing something new. Maybe you already know what I'm going to talk about, but you will relate to us. You can tell me how you do it, or you can relate to our experience and our pain sometimes. So let's start with refreshing the concepts for the people that don't know, to set up the expectations. What is an integration? So a software integration is the process of connecting software with another software via application programming interfaces, aka APIs. And APIs are the rules, the protocols that allow software to connect with each other. There are many, but the one that we are more familiar with, it's HTTP and HTTPS. So all the examples that I will show, it's APIs that we give via HTTPS, and they do say it's RESTful APIs, but nobody does that perfect. Specifically, we are going to talk about third-party APIs. You could have your own front-end client with your own API, but that's not what we are talking about here. Somebody else had to build that. So testing, what is testing? It's a broad term, but testing is like having software that tests your software. No, that's the next one. So testing is checking that your software works. We are like specifically referring to automated testing, which is now, it's a bit slow. I need to push harder. Good, good. I'm relaxed. So like automated testing is, if it goes over 30 minutes, it's not my fault. It's software to test your software, but what tests the test? I don't know. So it's like having like software that will test like your software is doing what it's predicted. So what is the particularity? Why am I focusing on testing external APIs integrations in this talk and not just general testing? Because you can do general testing with the tools that I'm going to show you. We cannot control third-party APIs. Like those are out of our control, and there are a lot of things that we need to worry about. And it's unlikely that like you hear developers saying, oh, I love this API. I'm having so much joy working with this, or the developer support is phenomenal. There's always something that triggers us, you know, even if they are good, there's always something that like they could improve, right? Not only writing tests is challenging, but also writing the whole integration. So let's start with an example. Cool. We are going to show a very simple billing integration because, as I said, that's everything I'm talking about. If you want, you know, you have experience and you want to like share it with me, come find me. So let's imagine that we have a service that's going to use the Stripe API to create a billing subscription, right? So it will do a post request to the subscriptions endpoint, and the subscriptions endpoint is going to return the response, and the response, like the status and everything that we know. And it's coming with a lot of like a JSON body with like a lot of attributes about the subscription that was created on Stripe, so you can do whatever you want on your side with that information. Let's keep it simple. It's really code, right? So like you have a create method and then you create the like subscription. I'm not doing anything with that apart from returning the Stripe subscription into whatever it's consuming this like method. But wait a minute, what is the API call here? Like where do we have that call? In this case, because I want it to be realistic, I cannot pretend that we are not using the Stripe gem to create our billing integration. So we are using a third-party like gem provided by Stripe. It is very good. I would not recommend you to do it any other way. But I would be thoughtful, as Robbie said again, about bringing more in, like gems into your stack. There are other tools that they provide their own like gems for connecting to their API. They are not as good. So if like your use case is maybe just one API call, do not bring it, because just go and, if you do that, just go and check how many HTTP clients your gem file log has on them. It's like all the transitive dependencies, it can go crazy. So I've ditched like gems out of our code base in favor of the just using an HTTP client, Faraday, whatever you want. So I just wanted to be realistic, but for the sake of this presentation, let's pretend doesn't work. It worked. Beautiful. Let's pretend that like we used an HTTP client that is doing a post request to the Stripe API, like sends the parameters in the body and like the headers, and that then checks the response, and it's like wrapping the response in an open stack. So like both services kind of work the same way. So we all know testing is important when you're building an integration, but how can you approach that testing? There are different approaches, and not testing is not included, okay? But that would be one approach if you want to take the risks, okay? So one of the approaches is like to hit the API, to not actually do like a live API call in every test run that you are like every time that you are running your test suite. That would be perfectly fine. So let's see the code and how that would look like. Was it so hard before? Is it my, okay. So this would be the code. It's like a simple, like we all seen that. I'm trying. Okay. So it just creates, like, we have a test definition with mini test, and we just use our service I need to. We just use like, we call the service and then we assert the expectations. It's not working very well. Oops. Anyways, you saw that, like the expectations already went. Make sure that like the IDs that you are using, they are actually real like this. This one was a test, you know, like an example for the top, but those should like exist. But let's be honest, because your test suite is not going to be as simple as that. Probably your integration is not going to be as simple as this one. And you will most likely have something like this. And I promise you, we are not bad developers. We have like one service for our like creating subscriptions and like a few more things like, but there are like multiple edge cases when you have a billing system as custom as we have. So this is just like the real test file of our like subscriptions updated service, we call it. So very easily you could have like, in this case, this is like a naive run of like our test suite. It's like almost 600 tests that like test things in our billing. So that can go like grow very quickly and escalate. So what are the problems that we can find here? One of them would be a slow API calls. And now I need to wait for this thing to move because then I cannot move it to the next one. So just for the sake of like this test, I benchmarked how long would it take to run that service. It was actually working and hitting the API, and it was 400 milliseconds getting an exception. Oh, it went to the next one. So you didn't see that one. It was getting an exception because I did not change the data. So no one wants to be in this situation, right? Nobody wants to be. I do feel like the CI is slower when you are in a rush. I don't know about you, but like that's crazy. Rate limits. So a lot of APIs, third-party APIs, they will have some kind of rate limiting setup that to prevent you from breaking their services. Like Stripe has one. Stripe has one. It's even more strict in test mode. But all of them, all the API integrations, they have one. So you need to take that into account. If you parallelize your test or something, you can easily get into that. Another of the problems that you get, it's like, this is like poor network conditions, timeouts, latency, schedule maintenance, catastrophic events, or like human factor, because we all break things, right? So these are the famous status pages, like even like the best ones, and I love Stripe, don't get me wrong, even the best ones, they have some problems sometimes, and that should not stop you from your test suite to be green and you be able to like deploy. Another problem is fluctuating data. If you're lucky, like you will use Stripe, you will have your sandbox, a sandbox that nobody uses, you know, you're like no problems, but usually you have like an actual production account that you use for all your tests in order to test your integration, and everybody can access that, and the data changes, and you cannot protect that from happening, and then your test will be broken. So what happens if those customers or that price disappeared? Like everything is broken. Another problem that we have, it's authentication and authorization. You might have used the OAuth flow. It's a delight. You know, we all love it, like saving the tokens, the refresh tokens, refreshing the tokens, keeping that updated. If you were to hit the, like, if you needed like a like OAuth token for that, you will have to deal with token expiration. And how do you deal with that? Like doing more API? No. That would get like the test suite slower and slower. And last but not least, there are some APIs that actually charge you per request. And if you go over the limit, they will automatically charge you. That's tax share. And like that's tax share. If your test suite, like it just usually looking like this, you know, like parallelized, we like every time we push, we like trigger that like CI, you know, like to make sure that everything works. It can easily become this, and we don't want that because of course, nobody here deploys to production with red CI. That never happens, right? So as you can see, a lot of things can go wrong, and you might know the solution already. Do not hit the API, of course, like use stubs and mocks. Like we missed the other one, but it did say that. So let's see how like a stop and mock, like very shortly would be an interceptor that you will like code in your test and will stop the API call from like happening, of course, because that's what you want. You don't want to make the API call. So you will put like your mocks and stops here. And in order to show you that, I'm going to present you the first gem that we use, which is Mocha. It's a very famous gem. It's a Ruby library for mocking and stubbing. Pretty famous, like well usage, probably you know, like you could use test unit for that, but it's easier, like the syntax is much better, I do recommend. So let's go back to the example from before. The first one, because there are different ways we can do this. If we were to use the gem that Stripe provides, we would like mock or stop like the actual third-party gem. So that would look like this. You will have like a stop Stripe subscription, so like a stop that responds to the Stripe subscription methods. And then you will like set up an expectation. I do not get the hang of this, man. It's complicated. So you will set up an expectation that the method create is being called and with the parameters that you are expecting. And then return the stop Stripe subscription, right? If we go to this example, in this case, you will set up with Mocha, you will set up the stop by mocking the HTTP client. So how does that look like? So you will stop the response that your HTTP client will return. In this case, I think this is HTTP party, but I'm not sure. And then you will set up an expectation on it that the post method is called with the parameters that you are expecting. If I manage to get there, then that will happen. And then you return the stop of your HTTP client. That will make your service pass and your test will pass because like you are like setting up the response and everything. But what if I tell you there is something a bit better? Because like now we've tested the same thing in two different ways. So you are coupling your test to the actual implementation and not what's going on in the backend, no, of that, like calling an HTTP. So there is another gem that it's more popular, even like that Mocha, apparently, that it's called WebMock. You might know it. And that gem allows you to stop and set in expectations on HTTP requests. Doesn't matter the client that you're using, so it's low level. And it only like doesn't allow that. I'll show you now if I get to pass to the next one. I'm going to need like 10 more minutes. So it's very famous, and this is how it looks like. You have a method that it's called a stop request. The method, you set up the word that you're using, the URL, the parameters that you are going to send, and what's supposed to return. But like what you are returning, it's like actually the HTTP response, so the status and the body of it, right? You could put more things there, but this is like the simplest. It also allows you to mock, set up an expectation that that request has been like actually performed as you want it to, because maybe the test doesn't do any request and you are just faking the data, no? But you want to test that actually the request was performed, which is great. And one more thing that provides, it's like a way to disable completely the HTTP request on your test suite. So, you know, and if you set up this and you have a test that it's running an HTTP request, it's going to tell you exactly what you have to write to make it pass, more or less, you know, like probably you need to adapt the return body. So that's it. I mean, we fixed all the problems, right? We are not doing more HTTP requests. We don't have the problems of killing the live API. The responses have predetermined data, so we don't have to worry about that changing. It's not slow. It's perfect. But like if you've paid attention, here, there's something like very noticeable. Like I'm just like Stripe is returning over like 40 attributes for the subscription, and I'm just like mocking like or stabbing like 3 of them, right? The ones that I need at that moment, but not all of them. And those ones, and you know, like this is the actual response from Stripe, which is a lot. That's the subscription object, which is a lot. And Stripe and other gems, I mean, because I'm using Stripe, this is a 3-month change log. They keep on adding things. These people are crazy. I don't know like how many they are. How you can keep up with that? How can you keep up with the changes if you're extending your integration and something, right? And you will the test is very basic, and you will definitely need to fine tune the stubs and mocks, because it's different in the response if you create like a yearly subscription, a monthly subscription, a subscription for 20 people, a subscription with a coupon, a subscription that it's going to be canceled, a subscription, well, all the edge cases, right? So do you want to have that code on your site, kind of replicating the Stripe API? No one wants to do that. Of course, you can have utils in the code to set up the fixtures, to reduce the amount of code, but that's not sustainable. So what if I tell you there is a better option? You might know this one too. It's called VCR. It's a gem that will record your test suite HTTP interactions and replay them during future test runs. What does this mean? You know, it's very famous. I should have skipped this one because it's getting complicated now. Very famous. So how does that look on our test, right? So this is the test that was hit in the API. How that would look if we were to use VCR. So very easy. We just plug it in there. We just need to tell the test that they should use a cassette. And what is a cassette? It is like a file that VCR will record the actual interaction. So in reality, you are doing a live HTTP request, but you are doing it just once, right? So the VCR cassette will look like this. And this is the actual, I run the things that that I'm showing you. This is just one request. And it's 126 lines. And most likely your test suite is going to have more than one, every test definition that you have. So this is important for later. What else? The good thing, you can actually see the HTTP request, and you don't want to be protected from this, because this is the documentation you get. You should know what's going behind the scenes, you know, and here it's very clear what's going on. And the body parameters, the headers, even if you are using the gem. You also see, or maybe not, the response. So just make sure that, now I'm just going hitting this crazy. Just make sure that the customer ID and the price ID that you're using are real, because you're going to do at least one real API interaction. So that's great. You know, we don't have to stop the things. We are actually doing live HTTP calls. We are recording them. And every time that we run the test, it will go find the cassette, and it's working. And VCR and WebMock, they work pretty well together, and we love both of them. So how we test integrations real life at Harvest. I'm not going to go all over the features, but I'm going to show you a few things, and I don't have a lot of time, so I need to please work. This is our VCR configuration. So first we set the library, the folder that we are saving. We hook it into WebMock. It's important. You don't have to understand how that works, but if you use both of them, please do, because if not, everything can go wrong. It's in the documentation, so I was just following the documentation. The default cassettes options, we make sure that in CI, none are recorded. So CI will fail if we forgot to commit the cassette. We serialize with JSON. And we match requests on method, host, and path, which is the deviation from the default. The default matched on method, host, and URI, which includes the query parameters, but it gets complicated with date. So we are doing best effort here. And we allow, oops, sorry about that. We allow, I can go back maybe. Oh, it also doesn't work. I want to go back. Oops. We don't allow the HTTP connections. This overrides whatever you have here. So make sure that if you have both tools, you don't set true here and you rely on this. I learned the hard way. I thought, they were totally disconnected. So in a similar fashion as WebMock, VCR is going to tell you if you're using if you're running a test and you don't have a cassette, or the cassette doesn't have an HTTP interaction for that test, it's going to warn you and let you know how you can fix that, which is very convenient. I think I got the gist of it. And then some extra things for Capybara. It's not important, but it's realistic. You will have to add that if you use both. We have extra tooling that like we find very convenient, so I wanted to show you. We have a way to recreate the cassettes because sometimes we want to do that when we do a major upgrade or something. And we have a way to have, instead of having to put the cassette name on every request, we use the name of like the test definition, like the description of the test as the file name of the cassette. So we built this util that is very convenient, so we don't have to reuse cassettes or like remember the name or setting up a name on every one of them. And then some extra things for like dates and so on. We deal a lot with dates, billing subscriptions. There are a lot of like date-dependent tests and also time tracking. So show me the tests. Spoiler alert, we use all approaches, all of them, even like the first one. So all of them. You will never get rid of that. So first of all, we always make sure this doesn't happen on every test run, but we make sure that like Stripe has all the data because the customers can disappear, the test mode data can be deleted. So like every time that we see the database is like this is run, and we can use actually webmock to make sure that like the seats are not doing API requests and just enabling the ones that we want. And there is one thing here, system tests. The browser interactions are not recorded by VCR, just the backend. And if you're using like a subscription provider, a payments like provider or something, when you fill in the credit card details, there are a lot of things that's going on in the front end to create the token and everything. So there are API interactions happening there. And you will say, you might have heard there is another gem that it's not so popular. It's called Puffing Billy that actually promises you to solve this problem. Like it tests the, like records the interactions in the front end in a similar fashion of VCR. So if you are one of these 3.8 million people or like downloads that managed to implement, like get it working, please, I'll pay. You know, impossible. And I would love to do that, but because our system tests, they are slow per nature, but they are slower if you hit the API and very flaky. So let me show you more examples. We mock the external gems. For example, in this one, we are using the Xero Ruby gem. We mock it. We mock the HTTP client. I had no idea this existed until very recently, 1 week ago. So this is the way of like stabbing in Faraday. We use webmock. We use webmock. This is like a highlight because of our other tool, which is called Forecast. Forecast is like an internal tool. We control the API, but it has an integration with Harvest. They are separated things. We don't have to depend on the Forecast server to be running in order to run the Harvest test suite. So we mock those, like we stop those requests on our test. And of course, we use VCR with our like utils. So do we have all the problems? Of course. Like, I mean, what would we do without the problems? So how we fix them? Network conditions, flaky tests. Well, we have those. You know, we just set retries and CI. This is like because we have another billing, so you know, like be pity about that. It's fine. With Braintree. Authentication and authorization, we have extra tooling, you know, that you can run in order to like get the access token into the fixtures, and that goes well, you know, like, but it has a step learning curve. We have fluctuating data. We make sure that our Stripe billing tests, every like test, they set up a full thing, you know, like the Stripe customer and the Stripe subscription and everything that you possibly need. So that gets recorded on the VCR cassette, then it's faster. And we have fluctuating data even with VCR, and now I went back to that. But we have soft assertions, so we don't assert like exactly the number of like records. And of course, I like before we merge when CI is read. We all do that, right? So to the conclusions, I have a few extra minutes because this doesn't work. So we try to use VCR as much as possible for new development, but we are like a 70-year-old application, so we don't get to fix everything that we have before we jump into other things. But like if we have to touch, then we will. The ugly, someone is moving this now. The ugly would be like, my PRs became this. It's very annoying when somebody goes to the PR and they see like a 400 file change, but I always put on top, it's just the VCR cassettes that I recreated, you know? And then all my stats are messed up now. But I do try to clean after myself sometimes. So sometimes there are dangling VCR cassettes, and this is very satisfying that you can do that. So the bat. Dun -dun. Extra tooling. It's more code. I know I show you more code. I said, like, we don't want code. We want, like, no code is better than code, right? No field, no code. So we don't have to work and just get paid, I guess. But you have to have extra tooling for that. Once it's working, it's convenient. Extra documentation. It has a bit of a steep learning curve for new developers to jump into that. It's like, how do I create the OAuth token? So you have to go. It does get fixed with documentation, but who reads documentation? Nobody does, you know, like, and, you know, nothing in life, it's always fail-proof. So I did one change. I didn't think about recreating cassettes. And because of the matching rules, for example, VCR doesn't match by body. That'd be crazy. It was broken. I deployed to production. I'm not showing you the code, OK? It was my fault completely. But the good things, right? And I'm almost on. So you have full visibility on HTTP requests and responses. As I said, you don't want to be like unaware of what's going on. You are using an API. You should know you are doing HTTP requests even if you are using a third-party gem, right? Even if you wanted to remove that third-party gem and build your own thing, you could just use the same cassettes, right? And have it working, or the other way around. There's good thing, because if there are duplicated API calls on that one thing that you're testing, you will see them very clearly. The cassette gets very long. It's like, this is not adding up. It's not like I'm going browsing all of it. But you will know if you're doing extra HTTP requests. You could cache them, memoize them, whatever. You don't have manually created stuff. You don't have to maintain that code, though. You know, you don't have to replicate the Stripe or whatever API you're using Logic to get the responses that you want. And it makes easier upgrading, which is my favorite thing in the world, extending functionality and refactoring. You know, like you can refactor everything. So this is an example of me doing like a two-version jump for the Stripe gem. I mean, those are not crazy. It looks more than it is. But it changes the API version. So I went to the changelog. I did this. I recreated a bunch of cassettes. Not that many in this case, because this change was only affecting one of our integrations, not the billing, but like the other one that we have one with Stripe Connect. So I recreated some, and I just, you know, I clicked through that, and I just deploy, because all in all, what you're going to get, it's a better test suite, one you don't have to trust, but you can like be in pace to deploy, right? And that's all we want. So thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry about that.